Hello, I'm Dr. Harriet Fraad.
And hello, I'm Juliana Forlano, here with our podcast, Capitalism Hits Home.
This is a show about the intersections of capitalism with race, with class, with gender, and with all those aspects of our interpersonal lives, including those things that keep us alive.
Our podcast aims to educate, activate, and even alleviate some of the burdens we all experience living in a capitalist USA.
We hope that this program is just what you need, that it serves you well. It's brought to you by Democracy at Work.
Harriet, I'm so happy to be back with you. We're continuing our conversation from last week where we covered what was happening in Texas. And we are covering again what is, we're doing a series on the basic human needs that should not be commodified. Last week, using Texas as an example, we talked about heat. This week, also using Texas as an example, we are talking about water and how water should be considered a human right and not something that corporations can buy up and sell back to us. This is happening all around the world and it's really important. But I think we decided we were going to hinge this on what was happening in Texas. 8.8 million people, as we go to recording in Texas, are still having issues with their water supply. And this was after a record-breaking freeze that knocked out power stations last week. Millions of Texans we mentioned this in the last podcast. They're being told to boil the water before using it.
Boil snow.
Boiling snow. Now, of course, this is not a good idea for many reasons. First of all, boiling may kill harmful bacteria, but it doesn't do anything, I just want to say, to remove toxins and pollution. And as reported by the Weather Channel, the deep freeze led to a huge spike in air pollution. Why, you may ask? The power outages caused refineries and petrochemical plants to shut down production. So instead of freezing their plants, they began burning and releasing gases into the air to protect their own processing units. The largest 5 refineries emitted 337,000 pounds of pollutants, which include benzene, which is known to cause cancer. And they're burning them and releasing them right in the air, which is where the snow falls from. Boiling water doesn't mean it's not going to poison your baby when you are making baby formula with poisoned snow. I mean, I was just taken, and these people with no water, I was just taken about like the cycle of capitalism. They tell you to boil the snow. It's totally fine. Then you make baby formula with poisoned water. That sickens the child, which drives the family into the medical establishment, which is just thrilled to have another cancer kid because they make big bucks treating the cancer kids if you have insurance. If not, you're out. Forget it. It's like this circle of oppressive capitalism. But I digress. Anyway, the water thing that's happening, the officials in Houston, which is the biggest city in the state, said that the water was safe to use, safe to drink. Harriet, do you remember when officials said it was safe to go breathe the air near ground zero so that we could open up the stock exchange and everyone got sick there?
I remember friends of mine had a parrot and they said it was safe. They went back to their apartment and the parrot just keeled over. So they realized, uh-oh, and they left. But not everybody has a parrot, a canary in the coal mines, so to speak. And they came back and got cancer because they didn't want to acknowledge the damage or pay for the money to clean it up. Because
and it's another cha-ching for the medical pharma industrial complex. It's like capitalism feeds on people and profits from death and destruction instead of, say, having a system that rewards life-affirming work and financially disincentivizes anything that kills anyone. That would be nice, right?
That would be very nice.
That's the only time when we could let the market decide, is if we have a system like that.
We can't live without water. Our bodies are mainly made up of water. And just as you mentioned so eloquently, Juliana, that they are taking what is ours, the oil and natural gas, from under our soil and making a profit off of it. They're taking water, which belongs to all of us, and making a profit off of it and running, and we are destroyed. You know,
Yes.
it's very
I
moving to me that just as AOC decided to help, raised $5 million and went down and served food in Texas, there's a rapper named A.J. McQueen who calls himself Water Boy. He has a water company and he's bringing huge jugs of water, carrying it to all these people in Texas who have no fresh water and giving it away because he was moved as a human being to human suffering. And so he's not trying to make a profit off of it.
So, just for clarity's sake here, water privatization is when a private corporation buys or operates a public water utility. There is also when water is bought wholesale and sold. That's another issue. And in 2010, the UN adopted a resolution that recognizes the right to safe and clean drinking water, a right, and also as sanitation as a human right that is essential for the full enjoyment of life and human rights. So this is, the United Nations is getting involved here. The threat of water privatization in the US and Canada is basically focused on taking advantage of debt ridden communities, right? So many water sanitation systems in the US are super old, they're in need of repairs. The Water Infrastructure Network said that US communities will need to invest $23 billion each year over the next 20 years to modernize our water and sanitation infrastructure. I don't see that money coming, definitely not, anytime soon. Um, and we see what happened in Michigan when Governor Rick Snyder, refused. They poisoned basically all of Flint
Well,
by
they
saying,
didn't.
well, we'll take the fresh water and send that to the corporation who needs to cool down its machinery. And we'll just give the people who live here, the black people, this poison water and tell them it's fine.
Well, that's because they didn't want to invest the money. Because in order to invest the money, just like in New York, water mains break because they're old. But the governor refuses to tax the billionaires that live in our state. So they don't have enough money. I remember seeing a study that said if they divided the money in the United States, the money of the billionaires and multimillionaires and everyone else, everyone in the United States would get $92,000 a year, which would be nice. But they don't want to tax the big money. Our governor, Cuomo, is a big one on not having any taxes. Even
Well,
there was a
doesn't this,
stock transfer tax that was passed in 1905, where for every $100 of stocks that were bought and sold, a nickel went to New York City, which desperately needs the money. Well, in 1985, they started sending it back to the stock exchange. And it's right there, it's in the books. But many
well,
politicians don't want to put it into use because they want to appease the rich so that they will get more campaign donations. This whole capitalism system.
I think it's worse than that, Harriet. If that's possible, I think that the government is in bed with the forces of privatization. So they have been sitting around waiting for water pipes to crack, waiting for people to be poisoned, just letting all of this happen and then saying, "Hey, we don't have the money." They're not going to tax it, right? Because as you said, they're just unwilling to tax the wealthy and then pay for people to have drinking water in their homes clean. And then they allow these other companies to just privatize. It's like they allow the argument for privatization. They're like, well, look, we couldn't do it. We just couldn't. We don't have the resources. Government's bankrupt. We
Right.
don't have the cash. We can't do it. So let's let Nestle do it because
Sell it
they're
to
going to
them.
have your best interests at heart.
Yes. And what
It's
this
insane.
shows is the best interests they don't have. They have the interest in making more money. And whether you die or not is irrelevant to their calculus. And that's what we can't allow with things that are basic needs, like heat and cooling and water and healthy food and other things we'll talk about. This is an
Harriet, you
atrocity.
you brought up Wall Street, and not only is water infrastructure moving toward private ownership, but trends on Wall Street also exist to commodify water resources. Food and Water Watch, great people. They do great work. I highly recommend them. Um, According to them, investment funds have over $100 billion ready to invest in the private ownership of water rights. And remember, T. Boone Pickens, that guy, the old Texas oil gas guy, he is one of the largest private owners of water in the U.S. He's been quoted as saying there will be those who sell water and those who want to buy it. It's the guts and feathers of the thing. Nice. That's very Texas to say guts and feathers. Anyway, you just wait and see. That's what he said. And investor recommendations from Wall Street advisors, you can go see them and read them. They basically say that Wall Street is already viewing water as a commodity. Obviously, the concern about that is that it will become subject to market prices. And then, in conjunction with private companies at the helm of the water infrastructure, only those people who can afford it will have access to water. And,
And
the commodification of water.
even those people may get dirty water because it costs money to maintain a water system and they don't want to spend the money. It's if only the only calculus is profit for your stockholders. It's not health. It's not serving people. And that's why
And that's even
capitalism is
just
so implicated.
And that's even just like about getting people water. I was also reading, the New York Times had a piece about how CocaCola, they're the worst, along with Bechtel. They basically, in Mexico, they are drilling down below the wells of a city that has very, very poor water and poor sanitation to get the nice, good, clean water and bring it up and make Coca-Cola out of it. And their government does nothing to stop that.
Yeah, well,
So the
because
people
they're
who
paid
are
off too.
working at the plant are drinking Coke. They're buying Coke and drinking Coke and have
And
huge,
making money
enormous
for
rates of
Coca-Cola.
diabetes. Yeah.
Right. And they're making more money because if you get diabetes, well, that's collateral damage. The point is to make money. And our criticism of capitalism is if the point is making money, that's what people do. But that if the point is life, that's what you care about. And what are your priorities here? What's important? Is it profit or is it life? We'd have to choose. Is it capitalism or is it another form of government that doesn't allow private property to take hold of the basic needs people have, like water or heat? This is a perfect, painful example, as is Flint, Michigan.
Harry, you and I are both mental health professionals. And I think it's interesting that, democratically controlled public water systems have been shown to work since before Roman times. They're the
Exactly.
backbone of public health. They're the backbone of economic development. They're the backbone of environmental sustainability in communities around the world. And it's like I there's this element of illness that is driving the privatization, which would be the opposite of democratization, of these resources. Is it fear that someone else is going to get and steal and take all the water? Is it greed that I think is also based on fear? What is the mental health issue that drives people to be terrified of sharing and democracy?
Well, I think they think that they won't survive as a corporation unless they're making more than the other one. And the idea of capitalism is you always have to get more to protect you from your competitors, and that more is better. Look, they don't have on TV programs lives of the poor and
And
unknown.
desperate.
They have
Yeah.
lives of the rich and famous. The reason that someone like Trump is constantly crowing about how he's rich is it makes him good. If you're rich, and then the museum treats you very well because you become a member and you give them money, or you might, and wherever you go, you might give them money. So you're treated like royalty. If you're poor, forget about it.
It
And
always
so
struck
they
me that
want to be chosen. They want to be important in this capitalist system, which is about money.
So when people are ready to choose humility and sharing and equality over self-aggrandizement, then we'll have a great place. But I don't know.
We will.
I'll probably be dead by then, Harriet.
Well, I certainly will. But then, you know what? It goes all the way to nursery school. There's a very cute children's book by Laurie Siegel where the kids are in the playground and one has a new truck and the other has a pail and shovel and they're playing so nicely. And the little boy gives the girl, he said, "You can have my truck." And she says, "You can have my pail and shovel." And the mother gets up and screams, "What do you mean that truck costs $14.95? That pail and shovel costs $5. Are you crazy? Get that back." You know, because in nursery school they're told to share and people are trained that money is everything, you have real trouble. And that they're
I,
trained from childhood that they have to accumulate money, they have to watch out for money, they have to see other people as potential competitors for money. It's sick.
it's hard. It's a definitely a ill illness.
It
It's like a
is.
mental illness. And then it gets in
It's a
there
mental
because even if
illness.
you don't want to be there, you have to be fearful because that's how the neighbors are. And then they will come and take your stuff because they're like, great, capitalism. It's terrific. That's
Right.
how we roll around
That's
here.
right. Grab it
Yeah.
and take it. Grab it for yourself. And who cares about the consequences? That's the national ethos, whether it's going in and plundering another country's natural resources or on a personal level, whether it's letting poor people starve and not get vaccinations and not get jobs and not get health insurance. It's a whole ethic that profit rules over everything. And
Mm.
that's what we have to stop. We have to have a different set of priorities. So, what's efficient is not what makes companies more money, but what's efficient is what helps people live. We want to
Well,
affirm life.
one of the issues is that if water is privatized and commodified, citizen and community water rights won't exist at all. And there will be no legal protections for things like the Great Lakes. There's the Great Lakes Compact that is supposed to protect the Great Lakes. They won't be enforceable. Under public trust principles, the waters of the Great Lakes are protected and can't be, those rights can't
Old.
be alienated by a government. They can't be
Mhm.
pulled. They can't be transferred or controlled. But also, there's a duty imposed on government to account for its actions and or approvals of any kind of diversion that's proposed to use those waters. The waters are in the public trust. Um, don't you think it would be mentally like it would sustain mental health for people to know that they own part of the water? They own part of the, as we talked about last time,
Yes,
the whatever the system is that helps them heat their
the
house. They
electricity,
own it.
whatever. Yes, the
Right.
energy, the electricity. Of course it
Just
would.
to
If we felt we're all in it together, these are our resources, and we have to decide how to use them and preserve ourselves, those would be very different considerations from a small group, a board of directors, which decides how to maximize profit. And that's all. And how to minimize publicity about the damage you do. Not minimize the damage, but minimize the publicity, which is why Tucker Carlson on Fox News said that the problem with Ted Cruz abandoning his state in the midst of a crisis was that he was taking care of his children. And that's why he flew. He intended to fly right home on a round trip ticket. But of course, when they looked at the ticket, it wasn't a round trip ticket. He was staying for several days to sun himself during the time that other people were freezing. And the neighbors, who obviously don't like the cruises very much, shared with the media that
no
they
one
were,
does. I understand.
yeah, that they were inviting neighbors, saying, "Oh, it's cold in here. Let's get out of here. Come with us to Cancun," without any mention of the fact that people around them are bleeding. They're
You know
suffering.
the thing about the water pipes that I thought was interesting is I was trying to get this in my mind, just holding this in my mind. The water pipes in people's homes froze and broke and destroyed their property, destroyed. They talk a lot on the news about property destruction, but I like this show because it strikes me that when your property is destroyed, it's an emotional trauma. It's an upheaval. You
Totally.
have,
Your home.
maybe your home, the sense of safety and security, the your memorabilia from people who have passed on or your children grew up there, all of that. There is, everyone talks about property damage, but it's not just about money and property damage. This is about emotional, spiritual damage. And of course, everyone says, well, nobody died and that's good. So I guess it's just stuff.
Well, of
Yeah.
course they
But
did
also,
die, though.
yeah, some people did die. That's a good point. But also, it
58 of
is,
them.
it is, yes, it is a trauma to, to have that kind of property damage. So the pipes froze because the heat was off. I don't understand why the heating companies who screwed up through their own negligence don't have to pay for people's property. Okay, what I saw was that Biden is going to allow FEMA to help pay for some of this. So we're going to pay for it. Taxpayers are going to pay for it. And also insurance companies. There's a lot of plumbers. The governor down there said a bunch of plumbers are coming in. We're going to help everyone. And then you can charge your insurance company for the plumber. And I'm like, can't they charge the people who are responsible
That's
for
right.
their pipes bursting? Why are the
EarthQuake.
energy companies not being held responsible in any way
Because they aren't,
for the
because this
damage
is a
they caused?
capitalist system and they are not held accountable for the damage they do. Look at the president. 500,000 people are dead because he didn't take precautions. China
The
has
last president, thank God.
1.37 billion people, and they did. We have more deaths than anyone else in the world, even the most populous nation in the world, China, because our government didn't take it seriously. And those people in our government that did not tell people and did not warn people should be held accountable. And those companies
I
that
think
supported them also should.
I think it's interesting that the insurance companies are, they're part of certain groups of corporations who say actually climate change is real and we don't want to pay for it. We don't want to have to insure the
Exactly.
houses that are going to catch fire in California. We don't want to have to pay for it. We don't want this cutting into our bottom line. So they are encouraging, you know, us as
Safety.
Americans to take climate change seriously and to prepare for it. I feel like it's going to be a battle of the titans, a battle of the big industries. Um, Unfortunately, I hope the people come out ahead, but that doesn't necessarily seem like
Well, they only will
big
if they
industries aren't going to do
organize.
that.
No, people will only come out ahead if they organize. And this is a battle, but it's not only between the companies, because look, let's face it, if you're poor, you don't have insurance. The people who were most badly hit in Texas were people in trailers who were poor. The average wage, the median wage in Texas is 30,000 and some. The wage paid to the head of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas is $883,000 a year. So he could afford insurance. But people don't have insurance. They can't afford it. And then what do they do? You know,
They apply to FEMA and they wait for 100 years for a check.
yeah. And they may
Yeah.
not get one. And meanwhile, they have no home and they have no
Well, Harriet,
furniture.
we have made good arguments over the last two episodes, I believe, about why heat and water need to be considered. They should not be commodified, and
They're
I've
basic
enjoyed working on these.
rights.
The basic rights, exactly. We will be talking about more of the basic rights that should not be commodified, but that are either commodified already or being slowly eroded and commodified in the next few episodes of Capitalism Hits Home, we do want to thank everybody for their contributions and encourage you that if you can, we've said before, we understand that people are in dire straits right now. So if you can support this program in any way, be it leaving a comment in the YouTube page, giving a thumbs up,
Writing a
sharing
letter.
it with friends, our audience is growing. Exactly as Harriet says, writing us a letter, either in the comments section and YouTube page or at info@democracyatwork.com. I think it's .com. That is also really great for us. But if you can support us financially, we are trying to become fully self-supporting for this program, and we would appreciate your donations through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/capitalism hits home. I do want to thank everyone who was involved in the show, in the
Me
production
too.
of the show. Yeah, we have a big group here that helps.
Yes, we
Brian is
sure
some
do. Otherwise, we couldn't do it. Brian,
yes, we
thank
have
you.
Brian, Maria, Liz, the whole team at Democracy at Work makes this possible. And also, you can find Harriet at her website. You do a lot of great stuff. Harriet Fraad, FRAAD.com. I'm on Twitter at Juliana Forlano, and I love the fact that a lot of you have come over and we've become Twitter friends. I usually follow everybody back because I want to see what you're posting too. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
We sure do.